What is up, everyone, and welcome in to your Celtics source. You know, an exciting two games last night between obviously the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets, as well as the Pacers upsetting the Cleveland Cavaliers in game one. And we'll talk all about that. We also have, the Knicks and Celtics, division rivals facing off each other. We got Jokic and SGA, two MVP candidates facing off each other. It's going to be a fun second round. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Before we get started, please like and subscribe, as well as follow me on social media so you don't miss out on any news, scores, highlights from the Celtics, as well as other teams throughout the NBA playoffs, all the way through the finals. Um, but, that being said, I want to start with the Western Conference. The Golden State Warriors facing off against Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. You know, the Warriors won last night purely on experience and the fact that the Rockets don't have a clutch star that can, seal the game in the fourth quarter. They've struggled throughout this series in tight fourth quarter games. The only games they've really won have been, you know, basically games where they've led the entire time. Um, you know, the score in this game was closer than or the score was farther away than you would think. This game was actually much closer. Um, in terms of you know competition. Um, the Rockets were face guarding Steph Curry the entire game, basically taking him out of the play. Sometimes they would guard him with two players off the ball. I mean, I've never seen this before. Face guarding a guy with two players. Basically, Steph Curry would just sit at half court and let the Warriors go 4-3 because there wasn't a chance for him to get into the play, you know, and it really, it worked throughout most of the game. Um, Nobody would have expected Buddy Hield to go off for 9 threes or whatever he made in this game. So, like, you know, had Buddy Hield not had that, I think the Rockets would have had a big lead heading into the fourth quarter and maybe would have won this game. Um, you know, Buddy Hield, I mean, if you're gonna have a moment, why not pick game seven? Um, but just like the way they were guarding Steph, just fouling him, they weren't calling that stuff off the ball. They were just letting him play, but like basically Steph would be standing on the logo and he'd have two guys um just not even paying attention to the play, just looking at him and moving. If he tries to go, they would go with him. It's sort of like if you ever play the game like capture the flag and you have a guy, in the box with the flag, you surround the circle, and if he tries to go, you move that way so he can't escape. It was basically like that. I mean, Steph could not move or try and even get into the play for most of the first three quarters. Um, but down the stretch, obviously Curry being one of the greatest to ever do it, the greatest shooter ever, he finds a way to get involved and basically does what a star does. He seals the win. You know, he found ways to get to the basket when he was being doubled from behind the arc. A lot of he'd get rid of the ball and then he'd get the ball back, and that would get the Rockets defense in rotation, and then he was able to get to the rim. Had some just unbelievable athletic plays where he would basically go up, realize he couldn't get the shot off, he'd go back under and lay it in reverse with some English on the ball. It was crazy to watch what he was doing down the stretch. Um, this is not a bad season for the Rockets. Yes, they were the second seed, but you made huge improvements from previous seasons. You're missing that one offensive player that can, finish a game off for you because, a closer by committee just doesn't work in this day and age. Um, Jalen Green threw up four duds in a row in these playoffs after being really their best offensive player for most of the season. Right, he averaged like 35 the first game, and then he went for like 7, 8, 5, and 7 again, and not that particular order. just like the inconsistency. Yes, I think right. He's a young player. He's gonna get better, but that's what really cost him because Fred VanVleet and Alfred Sengun had great seasons or great playoffs, but they just were missing that one other guy that could really be a star down the stretch. Um, you know, they might have to think about moving on from them. I don't know. I would think, if they can go out and get a guy like Giannis or someone else, maybe they do that. I would have to think that they would try and stay with Amen Thompson. Just his defense. He and his brother just freaky athletic, and they were both came into the season as not great offensive players, but they as the season progressed, they got much better on offense. And in these playoffs, both of them were scoring at a decent clip. They were able to not be basically liabilities out there on the offensive end. They had to be guarded. Yes, they're not great 3-point shooters, but they can get to the rim. They can dunk on people. They were just both fun to watch. So like I would think the Rockets would stay with him, just because he provides great defense, and then maybe you move on from other guys like Dylan Brooks, other guys if you can get a big trade for like a Giannis or someone else. All right, but moving on to the actual matchup here. Yes, the Warriors win Game 7. They have a one-game turnaround before they play Tuesday night. I think Anthony Edwards is going to torch them, just based on what he was able to do in that Lakers series, going at the Lakers basically lack of defensive support. Right, their three stars, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Austin Reeves, and the fact that they don't really have a center, um, allowed them Anthony Edwards to just do basically whatever he wants. And the Warriors are built, the same way, sort of. You have a great defensive center ish in Draymond Green, so that's going to be hard to get to the rim, and he's able to stay in front of guys like Anthony Edwards. But you do have Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry. You do have guys like Pajemski who are not great defenders. Jimmy Butler can be a good defender at times, but mostly Curry. If they involve Curry in every action, then you could tire him out on the offense end. Um, you know, Anthony Edwards, right? He's been, I would say, probably one of the best players in the playoffs so far, right? The Wolves, they're gonna go big with Rudy Gobert and try and overpower the Warriors' sort of lack of height, um, lack of size, right? Draymond Green is not a traditional center. He's a great defensive player and can get lots of rebounds and whatever. But if you put a guy on like Rudy Gobert on him, I think Rudy Gobert is going to be able to get easy points in the paint. And if Ant like outplays Curry, I think the rest of the Wolves bench with Naz Reid and others are going to be able to outplay Jimmy Butler and the rest of the Warriors crew. Um, you know the the Wolves also don't have a closer by committee like the Rockets do, right? They have a star guy in Anthony Edwards, so like it's not like they're gonna fall apart down the stretch offensively. So if it's a close game, you can see it going either way. I'm gonna take, you know, I'm thinking 7-6 ish. I think I'm gonna take the Wolves in 6. They do have home court. They looked fantastic in round one. So yeah, I'm gonna say Wolves in 6. It will be a closer series than I think the other Western Conference series will be, where Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder will tear apart Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets in, I'm thinking, 5 games. SGA, right? He didn't have a great first round series. He came up. He showed up in the last 2 games, especially that blowout in game 5 or game 4, where they beat the Grizzlies by like 60 or whatever. Um, but the Nuggets, they played great defense in round one, especially in crunch time, uh, against 2 stars in James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. Yes, I mean James Harden and Game Sevens. That's a whole different story. I mean he has not showed up once. I think he's 0-4 in Game 7. trailing only behind like Doc Rivers. Um, but this their defense was really out of the norm of their regular season, right? They were terrible defensively this season, right? They fired their coach because of that, and I think if they had kept their coach, they actually would not have won that first round series. But Jokic, he's gonna get his, right? He's impossible to stop. All you can do is try and limit him, and try and limit his playmaking and his uh, assists and getting other guys involved. Because if Jokic is going off for 30, but guys like Aaron Gordon, Kevin Porter, or not, whatever, KC, no, not KCP, the other brother, Porter, forget his first name. If they're if those two are not getting involved, then the Nuggets are going to have a hard time scoring. Yes, I think Jamal Murray is much better at creating his own offense, um, but those other two guys, and sometimes Brown as well, um, struggle without the help of a guy like Jokic. So if Jokic is just a scorer, which most teams try and do, and it doesn't work most of the time, but I think with the defense, the guys that OKC has, they're going to be able to handle Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. Okay, Eastern Conference. I don't know if you guys saw the game last night, but what the Pacers were able to do in transition was incredible. A lot of these coming off of made baskets by the Cavs, right? Just basically, it was the story of the game because like the Cavs would score, and the Pacers would be already down the court scoring on the other end before the Cavs could even get back on a made basket, let alone when they missed a basket and the Pacers could get out in front of guys. It was just crazy. Like the pace, the speed, the athleticism that the Pacers play was just unbelievable. And their defense was also elite too. Like I would not expect the Pacers to play like this defensively, right? They picked it up towards the end of the season, but for most of the first half, they weren't a great defensive team, and they weren't a great defensive team last year. And so, I think, I expect basically the Cavs to find a way to, you know, pick apart this defense, and then their defense is also going to improve against the Pacers' high-powered offense. And it wasn't even Tyrese Halliburton because Tyrese Halliburton, yes, he had a great game, but like it wasn't like out of this world. Like you can handle it. You got to impact the other guys that were scoring. Guys like, um, uh, what's their center? Obi Toppins, guys like that were basically getting free points in transition. The Cavs were like caught sleeping on multiple possessions. I don't think it helped that Donovan Mitchell went 1 for 11 in this game, and that Darius Garland or 1 for 11 from three, and then Darius Garland was out as well. He should be back for game two, but the Pacers are definitely going to go at him with his sore toe. I'm going to pick the Cavs in 7, just because I think the Pacers defense is not going to hold up, especially with Garland back in the lineup. But to be honest, this series could go any way. I would not be surprised if, the Pacers upset the Cavs. Like this series is just a bad matchup for the Cavs. Bad matchup for the Celtics as well, which I'll talk about, if we get there. But yeah, I'm gonna say Cavs in 7, but don't be surprised if this goes Pacers in 6 or even Pacers in 7. All right, final matchup: Celtics Knicks in the division rival. And I don't think this will be a close series at all, to be honest, just based on how the regular season went and, how these two teams play. I'm not being biased because I'm a Celtics fan. I just think that the same two players that make the New York Knicks so good offensively just make them a poor defensive team against the Celtics and other teams specifically. They were a great team for the most part against, good teams and obviously the average to low teams. Right? They found a way to hide Jalen Brunson, hide Karl Anthony Towns. But I just think the way that the Celtics play, where they're just going to hunt Jalen Brunson in isolation and other guys like that, um, it's going to be hard for the Knicks to overcome that. I did a full preview on this, which you can check out on my channel. Um, but like the Celtics, they're going to attack Cat and Brunson on defense. This will tire them out, and so they won't be as productive on the offensive end. Um, Cat is going to struggle in around screens and in drop coverage. Um, you know the Celtics are also going to leave basically dare Josh Hart to shoot, and you could get a game where Josh Hart just explodes like we saw from what was like Caleb Martin when the Heat beat the Celtics 2 years ago. So you could get a game like that, and that could, swing a game. You could also get games from Cat and Brunson, and that could, you could win a game here or there like that. But just I think the chance of them just out shooting the Knicks, and even if the Celtics are struggling to defend, they're gonna get open shots, and I think in a shootout, the Celtics are just gonna win. So I'm gonna say Celtics in 5, and I think this will be an. I don't think this will be as close as the Nuggets Thunder, which I'm also taking the Thunder in 5. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will be live tonight after the Celtics game. We will have coverage of all matchups throughout the week, throughout the series. So make sure to check it out. Check us out there. Follow on social media, and until next time, go Celtics.